You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible. Hi, folks. Roland Martin here. We've been covering the story of Ed Buck, of course, the big-time Democratic donor, who is now in prison. He is being charged on the federal level for the deaths of 2 black men, including Gemmel Moore. Well, Gemmel Moore's mother, she has been, of course, speaking out for a significant time on this issue, and she says justice is finally upon us. Joining us right now is LaTisha Nixon, who is joining us along with her attorney, Hussain, Turk, as well as Jasmyne, Cannick. All 3 have been fighting in this case. Folks, how are we doing?
Good. Glad to be here. I mean,
first and
you know
foremost,
how I was just going to say, Roland, this is not over for us. We're continuing on. I mean, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but it feels good to at least right now know that he's in custody, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, LaTisha, that's what I wanted to ask you, because the reality is, you had, unfortunately, your son dying, a second man dying, a third person overdose, and the reality is, as Jasmyne, you and others have been saying, is that this man was a menace to society, and that the only way to stop him from doing what he was doing was to put him behind bars. Granted, he has not been convicted, but the fact that he is in jail means that he is behind bars, and that may very well save the life of someone, especially an African American. LaTisha?
Yes, very more so. I want to tell you thank you so much for covering this story from the very beginning. We didn't have a lot of people that backed us up, but you did, and I just want to say thank you. And that was the whole purpose of us coming forward, was to save black men from being victimized. This fight is not over. We want justice for Timothy Dean. We want justice for the other victims as well. We want justice, period.
And Jasmyne, I think that really is the point. That first of all, when we talk about this idea of Black Lives Matter, the fact that African Americans have to protest, have to call media outlets, have to push things on social media, you cannot tell me, you cannot convince me that if a young white girl had died at the apartment of a black drug dealer, that authorities in L.A. would pretty much ignore that. You cannot convince me that that would be the case. But clearly, they said Gemmel Moore's life was not that important. Timothy's life was not that important. And thank goodness you and others made this an issue to force them to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the case of Mac Miller, I think I went on Twitter and said, wow, who knew the feds were carrying the torch for Mac Miller and the whole justice for Mac Miller and his death? And it's like, here we are. We had, at that time, it had been 2 years and we had been asking for the feds and for anyone to do something. And it's like, that's what black people have to do when it's our lives. We have to keep fighting and fighting and fighting. I mean, we're still in this fight today. And luckily we have people like Hussain, Turk on our side, who also is working with us and has been like such a huge part of this victory, just in terms of from the legal side of it, because you have to fight fire with water, right? And, Hussain is like the water. He puts it out.
And Hussain, I got to ask you, I mean, as a lawyer, I mean, surely even you're saying, guys, really, that 2 people are going to die in a man's apartment, and he still is walking around. He still is inviting people to his apartment, and it was this overdose of a third person for somebody to go, okay, I guess we've reached our minimum now of 3, so now we're going to take action. That is stunning.
It is stunning, and I want to add that it wasn't just 2 deaths and a third overdose. We actually had to take, over the course of 2 years and almost 60 days, 7 or 8 additional witnesses to the sheriff's department to give their personal eyewitness statements about how they too were victimized, how they too were drugged, how they too were sexually battered, assaulted, harassed, neglected, the victims of hate crimes by Ed Buck. So it was several people, several Black gay men who were victimized, who the police had information on, and they did nothing about it. And that's the basis of our civil lawsuit, is that the county has a policy, a concrete policy of ignoring the criminal reports made by Black gay men, because in their eyes, their lives don't matter. And that's why, unfortunately, we're in the position that we're in, where we have to stand up and say, yes, Black gay lives do matter. You asked me if I was surprised as a lawyer by all of this. And unfortunately, I'm not. Not only am I a practitioner of the law, but I also have studied the law enough to know that it was designed for this purpose. The law was designed to maintain white supremacy and white hegemony. The law was not designed in this country for people of color to use against white people. And that is why we have to push. That is why we have to be strategic, and that is why we have to be very creative and unconventional when we are saying Black gay lives matter, because they do. But in this system in which we live, they're not supposed to.
Go ahead.
LaTisha, Jackie Lacey, the district attorney, you would think a Black woman elected DA would be a hell of a lot more aggressive than she was in this case.
You would think.
You would think that, but Jackie Lacey is flaky Lacey. She doesn't care. I mean, my team, they pushed. Everything was delivered to Jackie Lacey and the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department on a platter. Everything. And she did nothing. Everything was delivered. All the victims except for one.
Maybe one or two. But here's the thing. You know, Timothy Dean should be alive today because Jackie Lacey had the opportunity to prosecute Ed Buck in the death of Miss Nixon's son, Gemmel Moore. Had she done that and he'd been taken into custody and prosecuted and convicted, he wouldn't have been in apartment 17 that night for Timothy Dean to die, nor for anyone else to go over there and overdose. And so it's really her fault. And that's why, even though we know we still have a lot of work to do, we're so happy that the feds have stepped in and snatched this case from her, because there was very little faith that her office was going to be able to get anything done. When they arrested him, he was facing 5 years, 8 months max on those charges. When the feds stepped in and took over, now Ed Buck, on each count of administering the drugs that caused the death, 20 years minimum, life without parole maximum.
And of course, I said this the other day. I said, I'm quite sure when she's up for re-election, the line of folks running against her might be as long as a line of people trying to get a Popeye's chicken sandwich, because a lot of people are not at all happy with her leadership. And I think in terms of what really happened here is a shame. LaTisha, your final thoughts. What do you want our viewers and our listeners to do next? Because as you said in the opening, this is not over.
I just want everybody to know that we are still fighting. We're still fighting this fight. I want to thank the viewers too. I want to thank everybody that's been there. Follow us on Justice, the number 4, Gemmel, GEMMEL.org. And you can also follow Jasmyne. She is phenomenal. I am Jasmyne. .com. But just it's so much going on behind the background, in the background scenes. I mean, it just really appalls me that Jackie Lacey they're trying to take credit for everything, and no, they can't take credit and discredit my team, because they worked hard and we're still working hard. I'm grateful. Thank
Hussain?
you again, Roland.
We love you, Roland.
Thank you.
We love you so much. Day one.
Yes.
Day one.
Well, I appreciate it. And the bottom line is, this is a, I spoke today to the National Black McDonald Operators here in Houston for their biannual meeting. And I told them, I said, this is precisely why we have to have black media, how we have to fund it, we have to support it, because the reality is we can't expect, or we can't even hope that somebody else is going to do the right thing and cover these stories. And I dare say, Jasmine, look, if it wasn't for your activism, if it wasn't for you sending the stuff out, us putting it on the air, putting it on Tom Joyner, these national media outlets would not have cared, because they were treating this story as just, okay, find somebody who died, somebody who can be ignored. And that's why Black Lives Matter, again, in newsrooms, not just when it comes to law enforcement as well.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Hussain, Nana, Ms. Nixon, the Dean family, all of the folks here in LA. Like, I know I get a lot of credit, but it really was teamwork. I don't do anything by myself. And our squad runs deep and wide, and we got it done.
We are family.
All right. Well,
love you.
We certainly got. Well, we certainly, Hussain, we appreciate it. Jasmine, thanks a lot. LaTisha, thanks a lot. We're certainly going to keep covering this. We're not going to let this thing die away again until Ed Buck is brought to justice. Folks, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, you've heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org because I want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. A recent report by New Frontier Data estimates the global cannabis market at more than $340 billion. We know that marijuana legalization is sweeping the country state by state. We also know that marijuana has a good cousin, the hemp plant, with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the United States and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, that all changed with the 2018 Farm Bill, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. They need land to grow all the plants, and that's where our friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is pretty simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. Now, 420 Real Estate has given something special for the Roland Martin Unfiltered family. Originally, the minimum investment was $500. You can now get in as little as $200. This is a crowdfunding campaign going from $200 up to $10,000. Again, this is a $340 billion global industry that is still growing. You can participate with as little as $200. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. This is marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.